Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sagana Krishna Dalita Shri Vishakhanitanushtam Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur-Bhakta-Vrinda.
Hare Krishna, dear devotees, Dandot Pranam, welcome to Nityam Bhagavad Sevaya. Today we are very happy to have the association of His Grace, His Holiness Chandramouli Swami Maharaj, of course through Vani. We will be hearing to a recorded lecture given by him on verse number 77, chapter 24 of 4th canto, chanting the song sung by Lord Shiva. Hare Krishna. I'll be playing the lecture in a minute.
Glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Srimad Bhagavatam, 4th canto, chapter 24, chanting the song sung by Lord Shiva, text number 77, out of 79 verses. Vidyate Purusho Musmahar. Vindate Purusho Musmahar. Yad Yad Ichcha Satvaram. Yad Yad Ichcha Satvaram. Magita Gitatsu Pritaj. Magita Gitat Supritaj. Shreyasam Ekavalabat. Vindate Purusho Musmahar. Yad Yad Ichcha Sadvaram. Mad Gita Gitat Supritaj. Shreyasam Ekavalabat. Vindate Purusho Musmar. Yad Yad Ichcha Sadvaram. Magita Gitat Supritaj. Shreyasam Ekavalabat. Is this being recorded here? Please repeat. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is the dearmost objective of all auspicious benedictions. A human being who sings this song, sung by me, can please the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Such a devotee, being fixed in the Lord's devotional service, can acquire whatever he wants from the Supreme Lord. Purport. As stated in Bhagavad Gita 6.22, Yam labhya chapkaram labham manyate nadikam tataha. If one can attain the favor of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he has nothing to aspire for, nor does he desire any other gain. When Dhruva Maharaj became perfect by austerity and saw the Supreme Personality of Godhead face to face, he was offered any kind of benediction he wanted. However, Dhruva replied that he did not want anything, for he was perfectly satisfied with the benediction of seeing the Lord. Except for the service of the Supreme Lord, whatever we want is called illusion, Maya. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, Jivera Suruphoy Krishner Nityadas. It's from Madhya Lila, chapter 20, verse 108. Every living entity is an eternal servant of the Lord. Therefore, when one engages in the service of the Lord, he realizes the highest perfection of life. A faithful servant can fulfill any desire by the grace of the Master. And one who engages in the transcendental loving service of the Lord has nothing to aspire for separately. All of one's desires are fulfilled simply by engaging constantly in the Lord's loving service. Lord Shiva shows us that any devotee can be successful simply by chanting the prayers which he has recited. Om Agyan Timidandasya Gena Jena Salakaya Chaksu Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Staptitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadam Mayam Dadati Swampadatikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Utapadikamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Sri Rupam Sagrijatam Sahagana Raganatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Sarvadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Sri Vishakam Vitamscha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gauranki Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Suti Devi Pranamami Hari Priya Vancha Kalpa Tarubhascha Kripa Sindhu Vaevacha Patitanam Pavane Bhyo Vaishnave Bhyo Namo Namah Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasari Gauda Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Lord Shiva's not only glorifying the Lord, but he's making the highest benediction that one can achieve, and that is he gives a blessing that anybody who chants this prayer, or these prayers, these are also, it's a series of prayers, by him, and can fulfill all of one's desires perfectly, completely, eternally. So here, it says that one can inquire whatever he wants from the Supreme Lord. So one might think, well, what will I want? But here it explains that when one is situated and engaged in devotional service, one is so fully satisfied with that service that one doesn't want anything but the service. So the highest benediction is devotional service to the Supreme Lord. It says that devotional service to the Supreme Lord is so wonderful that even if you could become the Lord, you wouldn't want it, because devotional service to Krishna is even better than being God. It says that. So how is that? We hear from the great souls the story of Dhruva. Dhruva Maharaj was mentioned. And this is a classic, and we might say the highest example of this particular principle that we're speaking of. And that is that Dhruva Maharaj wanted something material. And it wasn't a small material thing he wanted. He wanted a kingdom greater than Lord Brahma. Now, there was no such kingdom available. He wanted something that wasn't even desirable. Because of being insulted by his stepmother, he became angry and wanted revenge. His mother said, whatever you want, you have to worship God to get it. And he says, where's God? She said, sages and saints go to the forest to find the Supreme Lord. So immediately he left. He performed tremendous austerities. His father was the king of the planet. His father's father was Swayambhuva Manu, who was the king of the universe. And beyond that, there was Lord Brahma, who was the controller of all the kings within the universe. Dhruva wanted a planet better than Brahma. What a desire, right? I mean, what do we desire? Well, I desire just to be left alone. Don't bother me. I desire some nice prasadam. I desire, some nice partner in life. I desire, what else do we desire, right? Sometimes we desire money, so we can do things and get things. Now, these are the desires of the living entities in this age, pretty much. Or someone may also want a desire to be able to, control things. And I remember before I was a devotee, I used to think, well, by meditation I can control the moon, I can control the sun. All the living entities are moving under my direction through my power of meditation. You see that, because nowadays these yogis teach anything and everything. But these are small desires. What did Dhruva Maharaj? He was asking for a kingdom greater than Brahma. And Brahma is the highest of all living beings in the universes. And when he performed such great austerities to get it, it says the austerities that Dhruva Maharaj performed cannot be compared or even duplicated today. He was so austere that he gave up breathing. He was holding his breath through the power of the yoga system, through the power of pranayama, standing on one leg, not eating, not drinking water, holding and focusing his consciousness on the different transcendental parts of the transcendental body of Lord Vishnu within his mind. And at the same time, breathing once every month or something like that. Where can you find such austerities? And what was his goal? It wasn't the highest goal. He simply wanted something material. And because of his austerities, it says that if you perform austerities, you become powerful. Even the materialists, they do that, and they can become powerful. They want a political position, they want to control. They do some vrata, some austerity, some renunciation. Like people give up eating, fasting, taking into hunger strikes in order to get what they want. Different ways to get material power. But Dhruva Maharaj, his austerities were so powerful that the universal breath, what controls the air within the universe, was no longer functioning. He became the center of the universe by his austerities, so much so that the whole universal energy was being choked. And Prabhupada explains how that was possible. He says, if you're in an airplane and you're going 700 miles an hour, are you going 700 miles an hour? No, but because you're connected with the airplane, you're also traveling at that speed. So in the same way, Dhruva Maharaj connected his austerities with the universe, and therefore he became as powerful as the universe. And in that power, he was able to, because he was not breathing, there was nobody in the universe that could also breathe. I mean, imagine that kind of austerity. The demigods, their whole planets were shaking because of his power. They went to Vishnu and said, Vishnu, we're in trouble. You know, this devotee, I think he's a devotee, he's causing such havoc in the universe. Our planets are shaking. You have to do something. So the Lord didn't really come to see Dhruva, but he came on the request of the demigods. And when he appeared in a form called Prishnigarbha, a particular form of Lord Vishnu with 4 arms, holding conch, lotus, disc, and what else? Club, huh? Chakra. That's the disc. Club. Gada. And Dhruva, when he saw the Lord appear to him, he became overwhelmed with love just by seeing the Lord. He opened his eyes and there was the Lord. The same Lord he had been seeing in his meditation. And he just went into ecstasy. And his ecstasy caused him not to speak. He couldn't speak. He couldn't say anything. He just was so entranced by seeing the beautiful form of the Lord that he couldn't speak. He was overwhelmed with loving emotion. The Lord at that time, realizing his heart, took his conch shell and touched it on Dhruva's head. And as soon as he did that, Dhruva offered beautiful prayers to the Lord. And in the prayers, there's a beautiful prayer that Prabhupada quotes, which is in the Hari Bhakti Sudodaya. It's not included in the prayers in Bhagavatam. He says, my dear Lord, my desire is like broken glass. I'm after broken glass. But now that I see you, I see that you're the greatest of all gems. He no longer wanted that kingdom. He thought his desires were simply petty. And the Lord was so pleased by the devotion of Dhruva that he was willing to give him the kingdom anyway. And he did, although Dhruva didn't want it. We say, if somebody gives you something better than what you're looking for, you take that, right? If you want something, but someone to give you something better, then you take that instead of what you're looking for. So experiencing the happiness, it says that all his entire body was in ecstasy of happiness. Every limb was shaking with love. That's the experience he was having. And therefore, all he could feel was unhappiness at the same time, because he was feeling so bad why am I asking for something like a planet? It's so small. It's insignificant. And he didn't want it anymore. But the Lord gave it to him anyway. And he got the pole star, which is the planet where the Lord resides personally on an island called Svetadweep, which is the highest point within the universe, and it's surrounded by the Saptarishis. Saptarishis are the 7 sages who have their planets, and those 7 planets circumambulate Dhruvaloka in Parikram. They constantly go around the pole star. And the Lord gave him that planet anyway. Just because the Lord was pleased. But at that point, he didn't want it. So what does this say? This says that, we're looking for something material in this world. And we think we can find happiness in these things. But when we find Krishna, or at least find a little bit of Krishna, Prabhupada said even a small amount of Krishna consciousness is more powerful or greater than anything material in this world. Then if we find that little bit through devotional service, we lose our taste for anything material. All we want is service. Prahlad Maharaj, when he was asked to take a benediction by Lord Nrsingadev, he said, I'm not a merchant. I'm happy simply by serving you. The Lord wanted to give him everything. Kolavetya Sridhar, when he had nothing, he had clothes with holes in it. It said there were more holes than clothes. He would tie the holes together just to close the holes. He had nothing. Once in a while he would eat. He wouldn't eat regularly because he never had any money. He gave half his money to worship Mother Ganga. And Lord Chaitanya was so pleased with his bhakti and said, Sridhar, take a planet. Take a nice wife. Take whatever you want. I'm willing. The Lord was really enthusiastic to give at this particular point. Out of all the times that the Lord was enthusiastic for benedictions, Lord Chaitanya's desire to please Kolavetya Sridhar was really strong. But Kolavetya Sridhar said, my dear Lord, why are you giving me some trouble? If you're giving me something material, it's just a problem. Because when I have you, I'm happy. If you give me all these other things, then I have problems in my life. So he saw the material benedictions as simply a disturbance to his bhakti. That was the realization. And that is the understanding of one who's engaged in devotional service, that it's so satisfying and so pleasing that the devotee only wants more service. More service. More service. Because they're tasting the happiness of Krishna consciousness through devotional service. So therefore it is explained that devotional service cannot be compared, even a drop. In the Nectar of Devotion, in the very first chapter, it explains that one of the characteristics of devotional service, there's 6 main characteristics. One is that it brings transcendental happiness. And in that section, Rupa Goswami discusses happiness in 3 categories. Material happiness, happiness by liberation, Brahman realization, and transcendental happiness or devotional service. And he says if you multiplied the happiness of Brahman millions of times, you would get maybe a drop of the happiness of devotional service. So why aren't we happy? Why aren't we happy in devotional service? What is causing us not to feel happy? It's because we're still looking for material things for happiness. If we're still looking for those material things, we can't find the happiness that is available in Krishna consciousness. Because these 2 things are opposite each other. So Prabhupada says, as soon as you give up the desire to be happy in the material way, then your spiritual life begins. So we struggle to engage in devotional service. Jai Sisi Panchatattva ki jai. Sisi Gaurnitai ki jai. We struggle in our devotional service because we're still trying to find happiness in material things. And because of that, our attention is diverted towards these things. So, what is material and what is spiritual? Sometimes that's the question. Anything that can be used in the service of the Lord, that's spiritual. Anything that is used for one's own personal satisfaction outside of devotional service, that's material. So, does it mean because I have a husband or wife or a family, that's material? No. If everyone is a devotee engaged in devotional service, and your household paraphernalia is seen as the objects of service to the Lord, that is spiritual. That is not material. But if you see these things separate from the Lord and try to enjoy them separate from the Lord, that's material. So a devotee wants only devotional service. In fact, the devotee doesn't even want to go back home, back to Godhead. Prabhupada talks about this. The devotee is so happy with devotional service that they'll serve anywhere in any place. Narayana parat sarve na kushchista na bidyate swargam aparvarga, was it Tula Karla Darshanam? The prayer chanted by Lord Shiva when he was seeing how when Chitraketu was cursed by Shiva's wife Parvati to go to hell, he offered his obeisances to Parvati and said, "Mother, thank you very much. I'm on my way to hell." And Shiva, when he saw that, he chanted this verse. And this verse says that the devotees of the Lord, they're fixed on Narayana no matter where they are. Doesn't matter if they're in hell, heaven, wherever they are. They're like a compass. A compass is always geared towards the north, like that. So in the same way, a devotee always is happy in any material situation as long as there's devotional service. It's not the situation, it's the service, like that. So devotee is happy simply by engaging in devotional service. So devotional service is so satisfying, as we have our example, one of our devotees, Giriraj Swami. He was Giriraj Brahmachari he was staying with Prabhupada in India in the early days, and his parents were very wealthy. His father and mother came to Bombay to see their son and to meet Srila Prabhupada. The father was a millionaire. He was a high court judge. And they wanted their son to come back and be a nice, materialist. And they came to offer him $1 million. Now that was in 1972. Now $1 million today is not the same as $1 million 40 years ago. It's not the same. In fact, you can multiply it about 50 times, at least 20 to 50 times. So that was a lot of money in those days. A lot of money, $1 million. It's even a lot today, but it was much more valuable then. And Prabhupada was there. He talked to the family. He talked to the mother. The mother was quite emotional. The father was very sober. And they saw their son. And Prabhupada said, well, if he wants to go, he can go. Prabhupada didn't try to stop him, but he knew Giriraj wasn't going to go because he was so happy in devotional service that he rejected the offer. And Maharaj told me just a year or two before his father passed away from the world, which was around the year 2000, he again offered a large sum of money for his son to come back. So a devotee is so satisfied with devotional service that you can give them the whole world and they don't want it. They want devotional service to the Lord. And that's how satisfying devotional service is. So, if we're still looking towards material life for satisfaction and happiness, it's really hard to taste that happiness in devotional service. But as soon as we give up the desire for material happiness, we cannot give up the material desires just by wanting to give them up. But we can give up the desire to fulfill them. That's different. Material desires don't go away simply by you wishing them for them to go away. Because they're deeply rooted within our existence. But if we give up the desire to fulfill them, then that is perfection. That is perfection. So giving up the desire to fulfill material desires means that one can be fixed in devotional service. And then when the opportunity for material desires come, a devotee says, no, not interested. Got something else to do. Maya will always come and tempt us. Maya knows your weakness. She knows exactly where you are weak. And she will send that type of attraction or disturbance in your life. Whatever it is. She knows where you're weak. And so you wonder sometimes, why does this thing keep coming? Because that's where you're weak. And as soon as you realize that, and then somehow refuse to act on it and guard against it, then she looks for another weakness. It's like when you're in a boxing ring with a professional boxer fighting. If he hits you in one spot and then there's some blood there, then he's going to try to hit you in that same spot again because that spot is weak. So Maya knows your weaknesses, ins and outs. So if we carefully refuse never to associate with Maya's attractions, whatever they are, and stay fixed in devotional service, then by the power of devotional service, we can come to the stage as King Jamunacharya. He was no longer a king at this time, but he was a sage, formerly a king. And having all the royalties and the abilities and facilities for material happiness, he enjoyed life as a king. But then he came back to Krishna consciousness, devotional service, again, Narayan consciousness, and he became fixed devotee, so much so that he became the spiritual master of Ramanujacharya. He speaks, and Prabhupada quotes, when I think about, sex life, he was very much engaged in that activity, I get disgusted. He said, I want to spit. Prabhupada uses the word spite. I want to spit on it. I just become disgusted when I think about it. So no one can do that unless they're actually tasting the happiness of bhakti. But that's the power of bhakti. Bhakti can make all material desires look insignificant, as we have the example of Dhruva Maharaj like that. So one who's engaged in devotional service to the Lord is satisfied. Fully and perfectly satisfied. Even if their bodies are in difficulty, they never care because they know that my soul is feeling the happiness of Krishna consciousness or devotional service. So devotee never looks, even though Krishna sometimes wants to give his devotee something material just to please the devotee, the devotees may accept that material benediction and use it in Krishna's service. Krishna wants to give benediction sometimes, and sometimes you don't even ask for it, and there it is. Because Krishna just knows what you like or what you want and gives it to you because he's pleased. But at the same time, the devotee thinks, oh, okay, I'll use it for Krishna's service. Because the devotee knows that anything material or anything used in a material way simply distracts my attention away from the goal of life or like that. So here we hear about the glories of chanting this prayer by Lord Shiva. And what are the benedictions? That the Lord becomes supremely pleased and a devotee can get anything they want. But a devotee only wants Krishna. Okay. Should stop here. Any questions? Yes, Prabhu. How and why?
Someone renounced material desires. He doesn't have any experience of bhakti.
Well, that's another kind of renunciation. That is called Falguna Renunciation. And that's the renunciation of the suffering of the material world. Due to suffering in this material world, one wants to give up all material activities. Jai Sisi Panchatattva ki Jai. So what is that type of renunciation? It's type of an existentialism which sees that this world is full of suffering but yet doesn't engage in devotional service. So the Jnanis, the Mayavadis, the existentialists, this is called false renunciation. Not knowing that this material world is also created by Krishna, and it has a purpose to be used in the service of the Lord. So when you can't enjoy something, you want to give it up. So that's the frustration. I can't enjoy it, I give it up. But then again, if you don't take on something positive, then eventually you go back to that same activity again, or something similar. So this is called false renunciation. Because giving up something means accepting something. There's no such thing as complete detachment without attachment. You have to be detached from Maya and at the same time attached to Krishna, or attached to Krishna's service. So simply to give things up is what Rupa Goswami calls that incomplete renunciation. Nirbande Krishna Sambande Yukta Vairagya Yuchjate. Real renunciation. Yaryatam Upayunjate. Nirbande Krishna Sambande Yukta Vairagya. Anashaktasya Visayan. Yaryata Upaunjate. Nirbande Krishna Sambande Yukta Vairagya Uchjate. That renunciation that is positive. Positive renunciation. That's why we see there are people who are devotees, great devotees, who have a lot of material things. But still, they're not attached to it. And they're attached to serving Krishna, and they use these things for serving Krishna. Prabhupada said, there was one yogi, Prabhupada would say, if you give him money, he says, no, I cannot take. Money is material. Prabhupada said, you give me money? I take it and I will use it for Krishna's service. That is renunciation. That's the difference. So due to frustration, the materialists want to give up material activities. But a devotee wants to take on spiritual activities. Does that answer your question? Okay. Thank you. Yes. How to develop a taste for service? Ruchi. Ruchi means taste. There's different ways. If you eat a lot of prasadam, you get a taste for service. But that's the longest way. It takes a while for that to develop. If you associate with great souls, that's the fastest way. And the recommended way. Therefore, we were speaking yesterday how important it is to associate with pure devotees, or devotees who are senior to us. That's the recommended way. Through that kind of association, we aspire to be like them, and we also develop some of their qualities. If you associate with someone long enough, you start picking up their qualities. Like that. Yeah, that's the best way. Through association, through chanting the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, through prasadam. But the fastest way is sadhu sangha. Recommended way. Okay. Anything else? Yes. Hare Krishna. Yeah.
I'm writing the seminar about happiness for my study. And my question is, how can introduce to study students what is real happiness?
How can you explain to the students what is real happiness?
Yeah, because I couldn't talk about devotional service.
Well, you can tell them what is not happiness. Happiness is something inside, not outside. This is the basic principle. When your heart is happy, it doesn't matter what's going on around you. But if your heart is not happy, you can be surrounded by so many things and still be miserable. So happiness is something internal. It's an affair of the heart. It's not simply the contact with the senses of the objects. That's not happiness. That's simply a relief from suffering, that's all. So happiness is what's in your heart. If your heart's happy, you're happy. If your mind's happy, it changes in a few seconds. So make the heart happy by becoming Krishna conscious. Krishna's in your heart. And you can tell them, some people have a lot of money, but they're not happy. Some people have whatever they want, and still they're not happy. So that shows that having things doesn't bring happiness, but having love or the emotion of satisfaction in the heart due to relationships, that's happy. Question? Yeah. Yeah. Without peace, there's no happiness. Peace means satisfaction with whatever you have. Good point. Yes, question?
It's connected to happiness and how to speak to students. It's one devotee came up with a nice example. It's an actual exercise to demonstrate it. And what he did, he found two big boxes, filled them up with shredded paper, and inside each box he put some fake jewels you can find from Hobby Craft or something. And then he told them that within this box there are jewels. You're supposed to find as many as possible within a certain time limit. But there is one jewel, which is the most important one. If you find that one, you win everything, no matter how many jewels you got. And what he does, he hides that jewel in an envelope, and then he puts it in a pocket somehow. And
In the box?
No. The key jewel he puts in a small envelope, and somehow by distracting him, he puts it in their pocket or
in their pocket.
Yeah. So they rush around and find all these other insignificant things, and then he said, "You found all these jewels, but the one jewel that could have won everything, you couldn't find it. And I checked in your pocket, and I didn't say it was in your pocket." So it's talking about happiness is within, you're running around, but the one thing that you really need is there. It was in your pocket all this time, but you didn't go to it.
Yeah, that's a practical example. It's a good exercise. We also used a similar story like that too. The man looking for his treasure around the world, but it was in his backyard. Yeah, so your happiness is right there with you. You just have to get to it. Is happiness coming with? Gratefulness is an expression of a type of feeling that is acknowledging someone else's activities towards you, which is an expression of love or affection. When you're grateful, that's an affair of the heart. Someone does something for you, just like the spiritual master gives you an opportunity for eternal life. So you're grateful towards the spiritual master for that. And that is bhakti. If we are not grateful for what people do for us, or what they give us, then we are considered to be ungrateful. So if they say if you're not grateful, you're a great fool. Haribol. Yeah, so, I mean, there are people who are not grateful. They expect all these things to happen to them because they think they deserve it. And when they don't get it, they're unhappy. And when they get it, they think, yeah, I deserved it. I earned it. I worked for it. If you have a relationship like that, your relationship's going to fall apart. Even, in a relationship between a husband and wife, if you put expectations on each other, and when the expectations are not fulfilled, then the relationships get rough or strained, sometimes break up. But if you're grateful for whatever person does in the relationship, then you reciprocate in the same way, and that relationship will also grow like that. But if you have demands on your partner or on your spiritual master, on your teacher, on anything, you can't be grateful because you think I deserved it. Devotees grateful. When they get prasadam every day, they say, thank you, Krishna. It's not like, prasadam is there. But if we're grateful for the prasadam, then we'll actually appreciate the prasadam even more. You're grateful for the association of devotees, and when you lose it, then you realize what you lose. But if you're not grateful while you're in it, you may lose it. Don't be, just like if you have a close friend or a relative, and then they die, and you think, oh, gee, I wish I would have spent more time with them when they were alive. I wish I would have spent it, I got to know them better. You feel the loss after they leave, but you didn't take advantage of the association while they were here. Right? Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj would always tell me that his mother used to say, give me the flowers when I am alive, not after I'm dying. I thought that was pretty nice. Give me the flowers while I'm alive, not when I die. So, yeah. Okay, does that answer your question? Anything else? Okay, thank you. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.
Hare Krishna. Thank you. Thank you, Maharaj, for wonderfully explaining how potent the devotional service is, and one who truly performs pure devotional service does not want to exchange devotional service for anything that is part of this world, unless they want to use it in Krishna's service. Also, the last Q&A session, especially the point about being grateful and how we can be thankful and grateful that people are with us rather than when people are not with us. Something really worth contemplating. Devotees can unmute if they want to share any reflections. Please share.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Thank you for the nice audio. Prabhuji, can you please explain that false renunciation, Prabhuji?
Yeah, I'll try, but devotees can also please help me in explain the point. What Maharaj was saying is Markata Vairagya, or basically it's like giving up externally, but still having a taste or an inclination to enjoy sense gratification. Earlier, Maharaj was mentioning a point where when devotional service is so sublime and one who tastes it or relishes. I think you asked the question yesterday also, like devotional service is so easy, then why we are not happy? Maharaj was saying because of our inclination to still enjoy or find happiness in material things. So my understanding from today's lecture is that we still externally we may say, okay, I'm renounced, I'm not interested in material things, but still if we look for happiness or if we look for gratification in material pleasures, so that's essentially the point around false renunciation. And also Maharaj was clearly explaining from Rupa Goswami's instructions that for a devotee, nothing is worth renunciating, because everything is part of Krishna. So even something material, as Maharaj was explaining, the difference between material and spiritual is just if something I want to use from my gratification, it becomes material. So anything in this world, when we want to use it for Krishna's service, it becomes spiritual. So these are the few points I could understand and share. Devotees can also add. Does that first answer your question, Mataji?
Thanks, Prabhuji. But I feel it is like a process, Prabhuji. When we are doing sadhana, we give up something, maybe internally still attached to it, but gradually I think it will go away, no, Prabhuji?
Definitely. What you said is right. Devotional service is a process, like Prabhupada itself calls a process. So for a process, generally in the material world, we say plan, do, check, act, or plan. Yeah. So you plan something and you do it, and you have to check whether we are in the right path, and then take the feedback and course correct and act upon it. So it's a cycle.
Okay. Thank you very much, Prabhuji. Thank you.
One point on that, Prabhuji, just wanted to add, Prabhuji. I think this false renunciation is always about just a detachment. But Maharaj, what he emphasized was in devotional service, it's not about detachment, it's about attachment at first. You get yourself attached to devotional service and Krishna. And detachment that happens naturally without much endeavor. Like what Mataji said, if you are attached to our sadhana, so the detachment from other anarthas that happens gradually without much endeavor.
Thank you very much, Prabhuji.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
So I heard one of senior Vaishnava's class that our focus is should always be to attachment to our service and attachment to Krishna. So we don't need to worry about detachment because that happens on the way.
Thank you, Prabhuji. It has answered my doubt. Thank you very much.
Prabhuji, one point I want to.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu Dandavat Pranam. Thank you very much. Nice video.
Hare Krishna.
Yes, Mataji.
I just had two more points. One is Maharaj was mentioning that it should be positive. Our attitude should be positive. So when it comes to false renunciation, if we take up any positive role in our devotional service, then we don't have that tendency to renounce in a false manner. And the other one is just because you're suffering, giving up sufferings. If you want, like you mentioned, I forget now, but he said, if we want to leave this, give up this material world just because of sufferings, that's also false renunciation. Am I right, Prabhu?
Yes, Mataji. As what Maharaj was saying, the point is the point about Shiva making for the devotees. Even this material world is very happy place. Yeah, that's true. What you have shared. Sankarshan, you were sharing something, or?
Yeah, one point what I realized, Prabhuji, from Maharaj was quoting about Dhruv Maharaj experience about his desire for material benediction and then regretting about that later as a broken glass piece. So as a practicing sadhaka, our realization may not be to that extent, but in our path of this devotional service, we would have seen that when we started practicing chanting and getting ourselves engaged in devotional service, some of our desires, without much effort, material desires must have gone, like willingness to eat outside or going out for party with the office colleagues. All those petty desires without much effort has gone out. I think that's the example I could relate. May not be to Dhruv Maharaj at all, but to our level as a sadhaka, I could relate that. Prabhuji. The patent of devotion service.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Malini Sundari Mataji explained about the suffering. Can you please explain it, Prabhu?
Oh, what she was saying is even when we have sufferings, actually we may think that maybe it could be in the context of some service or something, or our executing our responsibilities, grihastha duties. There could be some suffering. So we should not, in the context of saying I should be away from suffering, we should not give up those duties. So that is what I understood. So that is also considered as a false renunciation. It may not just be in material duties, but anything, any devotional service or anything. If something is not conducive for us, or if it is not coming out as per our expectations, so not doing that is also false renunciation.
So we should accept that it is our past karma. We have to undergo the reactions. Prabhu?
Yes, to an extent, and also as a part of doing our duty. Like if we are given some material, there are material duties. We need to do that. We need to we should not abandon those. Or if there is some spiritual seva, we should continue in the spirit of serving senior devotees, Vaishnavas in the moment.
Thank you very much, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Okay, I think we'll end the discussion here. Thank you, all the devotees, for your active participation. We'll conclude here. We'll meet again tomorrow. We'll conclude with Vaishnava pranams. Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya eva cha patitanam pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. His Holiness Chandramouli Swami Maharaj ki jai. Srila Prabhupada. Hare Krishna.